Underwriting deals is such a major pain point for people. Most don't want to do it, and the people that are good at it are few and far between. That is why after 6 years of being in the industry and buying over 1,200 apartments, using my best-selling multifamily deal analyzer, I created Real Estate Lab, a full suite acquisition software for multifamily investors. We have built a product that helps investors automate their acquisitions and close more deals, all in a cloud-based platform. You can go to realestatelab.com and sign up today using the promo code TAG2 for 10% off your first 12 months. This is David Tupin. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to The Apartment Gurus, where twice a week, host Tate Siemer brings you deep dive interviews with the wisest gurus in the apartment investing industry. These experts are sure to create game-changing value and inspiration designed to catapult your business to the next level. Be sure to reach out to Tate at www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. And now, here is Tate Siemer and the Apartment Gurus.
Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Apartment Gurus podcast. And it's a pleasure to be with you today. Chelsea, my trusted co-host and partner, cohort is another word we could use for that, is not with us today. So it's back to the Apartment Guys format with myself and Mr. Charles Seaman. Charles, I'm really glad to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So listeners, we're going to talk about this, but Charles has something super valuable for you that's free and very, like I said, very valuable. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But Charles is in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he's the managing partner of Cash Flow Champs. And basically, he builds and maintains broker relationships and oversees the company's underwriting activities. He's also involved with contract negotiation and capital raising to make sure the deals close. And he remains involved after closing to manage the assets. So, this is like exactly what I do. I'm the captain of our ship at Greenlight, and being that, I kind of have to oversee everything, and acquisitions is a huge part of what I do. Contract negotiation, capital raising, investor relations, broker relations. And so, I'm really excited to talk to you, Charles, about your experience with all this and kind of bounce some ideas off of each other. But, Charles owns, he's general partner in 8 properties, which ironically is exactly what we have, 691 units, and went full cycle on one of his properties, which was a 92 unit. And this is really interesting, listeners. I coach people a lot about one really powerful way of getting into this business is to go work for somebody else in some capacity. And that's exactly what Charles did. He worked for 14 years as for a commercial real estate investor in New York City, and assisted the investor with acquiring deals, obtaining financing, managing and leasing them after the deals were closed, and also assisted with management of other businesses. And during his spare time, he traded stocks. So you're going at it, Charles. That's awesome. You got an impressive track record. And well, I just want to follow up on this. Like, Charles learned the business intimately and in detail, like fully trained, fully experienced by working for another investor. And that is a extremely powerful way of getting into the business. And I highly recommend something like that. So listeners, just consider like this option, this possibility of going to work for somebody else, whether that's another investor, a brokerage, even property managers. Like that's where you really, really learn the business, and you're going to develop a lot of expertise in that time, and you're going to be able to hit the ground running when it comes time for you to do your own thing. Charles, welcome again to the show, and love for you, if you wouldn't mind, for me and the listeners, to have you share a little more color on your background, and share with us a little more about how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. So let me first, second what Tate said about working for somebody else. The reality is there's absolutely no way that I'd be where I am today if I didn't have that experience. And to say it was, crucial is probably an understatement.
Yeah.
Now, what I would say is I probably took a different approach than a lot of people. For me, it wasn't so much that I sought real estate or commercial real estate out. At least not initially. Now I do, but when I first started, I didn't. At that time, I was 20 years old, and what I tell people is I was young, dumb, and broke, and I needed a job. And it wasn't so much that I set out to become a real estate investor. That's just kind of what resulted from it. But as I wound up getting that job, I was fortunate to work for a guy who was very successful in a lot of different things. And he owned different businesses and different properties. And initially when I started there, we developed a kinship because I think he liked that I never said no. Probably didn't do so great for my social life, but it was good for, my professional life and career, because it gave me a lot of opportunities and allowed me to advance fairly quickly, because I always said yes. Whenever he said, will you do this? Will you do that? Yes. So because of that, it also gave me a lot of opportunities to learn from a guy who was very successful. So, a lot of times during the daytime, much of the time and the energy would be spent on some of his other businesses. And then at nighttime, when it was just he and I in the office, he'd work on the real estate stuff and I'd be able to learn from him. And, here I was at 20 and 21 years old, and I'm learning from the guy who's very successful, way more successful than I've been so far, on basic things like negotiating deals and reading contracts. And we would sit there and he would show me what he would pick apart as he's reading a contract, things that I still use today. And with the different industries that I had exposure to, there were different things that were good about all of them. But I knew that real estate was the one that I naturally gravitated to. And it was the one that I could see myself saying, okay, you know what? This is where I eventually want to wind up as I do my own thing. And fast forward a little bit. So fast forward 9-10 years, I was at the job and I was making a decent living. I wasn't rich, I wasn't poor, but I was doing all right. And I had more responsibility. I probably thought I was important. And, so sometimes you kind of lose focus. So when I initially started there, my intent was to eventually leave and do my own thing. And when I first started there at 20 years old, my timeline in my head was 2 to 3 years. And next thing you know, you're there a decade. I said, okay, well, what happened to that timeline? So I started dabbling in real estate. I started going into single family because I really didn't have any desire to be in single family, but I also knew I didn't have the money to go out there and do commercial deals myself. So, I hired a mentor. I started learning about wholesaling in single family. And I realized 2 things pretty quickly. 1, just didn't like it. And 2, I wasn't good at it. Mm-hmm. And not to say that I couldn't have developed the skills to become good at it, but I already had a skill set that was good for commercial real estate. And I really wanted to be in those deals. So at that point, I kind of took a step back and just kept working my job and figuring out, okay, what am I doing in life here? And about a year down the line, that was the first time I discovered syndication. And, initially I was, learning about it. And I'm saying, wow, this is great. I can go out there and use the skills that I already have. I can do the deals that I want to do, and I can use other people's money. So this kind of leads to the best of both worlds. And now I can kind of use what I already have and be involved in the deals I want to be in. So this was a great solution. And fast forward to where we are now, that was 2016. So then 2017 and 18, I took some courses. The reality is I really didn't learn much new in the courses about the real estate side of it, because that I already knew from doing it in my day job. The one thing that was good is that sometimes when you only know one way of doing something, you don't really know if it's the right way or not. So I was glad to see that at least the things I knew was exactly how it was taught in the courses. So that was good. Mm-hmm. The syndication side was brand new to me because capital raising wasn't something I was familiar with. And it was something that, I knew if I was going to be successful in this, I'd have to become familiar with. So from mid 2017 on, I started looking for deals on a regular basis and just doing whatever I could while still working my full-time job. And, fast forward about 2 years from that, and I closed my first deal. And, the first deal is always the toughest one, but after you get that, they start to add on pretty quickly.
Love it. Tell us a little bit. When was that first deal?
So the first one was September of 2019.
Okay. Yeah.
And that one we just went full cycle on about 2 months ago.
Nice.
So, you're going to look through a lot of deals, and some people go faster. Some people take longer. It really depends on probably, your personality, how much time you're putting into it, and a lot of different factors. For me, I knew that I was, strapped on time because I was working 60 to 90 hours a week at my full-time job. So the most important thing that I knew for me was just being consistent. And I knew that eventually, if I was consistent, I would start to see results. Now, granted, keep in mind, for anybody starting out that's brand new, for me, consistent was 10 to 15 hours a week most weeks, because that was all I had on top of the 60 to 90 hours a week I was working. Yeah. But it was structuring your time so that you're getting the maximum result out of it.
Yeah.
Eventually, I got to a point where I said, okay, I can keep doing this, but it's going to take me a decade to get the results that I want.
Right.
So I decided to bite the bullet, and I took the plunge. And in mid-2019, I left my full-time job, moved to Charlotte, which was my target market, and just threw myself right in it and said, well, let's see what happens. So then, from that point, we closed our first deal a few months after that. And I'm kind of glad that I wasn't working a full-time job, because if I tried to be as active as I was with the job, it probably wouldn't have worked out too great.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. There's so many good takeaways already. Charles touched on. First of all, very first thing he did in real estate was he hired a mentor. Now, it was in single family, and he didn't end up doing single family, but this is so key. And you hear this over and over and over again with guests on the show that are highly successful, that, they start with a mentor, right? And a paid mentor is where it's at, guys. Like, you have to, in my opinion, unpaid mentor is going to produce a fraction of the value that a paid mentor will, because a paid mentor is obviously committed to you, and they gotta deliver, right? And then the next thing Charles did was he took some courses and got that specialized knowledge in capital raising and syndication that he needed to do the deals rather. And like, doing that, it again, like, it gives you confidence. It gives you, actionable advice and lessons on how to do things, like Charles said, maybe a little differently than you already know how to do them. And then another thing he talked about was consistency. And even though he was 10 to 15 hours a week, he was consistent with that, and he structured it. And this is so necessary. Like, if you can't jump in full time right now, you need to structure your apartment syndication time, whatever stage you're at. And then, finally, and I think this is most important, Charles made the shift from the employee mentality to the owner mentality. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about that, but that is what it takes for all of us. And I was already an entrepreneur when I got into this, but it takes that mindset shift. And not only was it a mindset shift for Charles, but he moved. Like, did you know anybody in Charlotte at that point?
Not at all. I signed the lease to move down here, sight unseen, and just kind of went for it.
Yeah, I mean, it sometimes, like, there's a Joseph Campbell quote about, essentially it's like, in the course of life, you're going to come to a chasm and jump, because it's not as far as you think it is. And you almost, typically land on your feet. And not only did Charles land on his feet, but look where he is now. And that was only 2019 that he did that. So, here we are 3 years later, 690 plus units. And, he's got a goal of 200 million by the end of next year, I believe, or was it 2023? It was 2023. Yep. So end of next year, going to be at 200 million in assets under management. And that's tremendous. So, really great job, Charles, at taking that leap. You did it like big time. When I moved to Utah, it was the same story. I didn't do it for business. I did it to ski, but I didn't know a soul. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a place to live. And I just showed up in Salt Lake City and figured it all out. And I got to say, like, my experience of doing that was like, there was something at work, whether it's the universe or God or however you contextualize, the divine mystery out there that can be helpful to us. I felt like I call it the universe. The universe really rolled out the red carpet for me as far as giving, job opportunities, fun opportunities, friends, girlfriends, like, skiing. It was all there for me. And it showed up for me in ways that were very serendipitous. So, when you act boldly, in my opinion, the universe acts boldly on your behalf.
Right.
And this is a great example of that. So, again, like, the hardest thing about doing your first deal, and Charles touched on that as well, is first of all, just shifting your mindset to a place where or you believe that you can do it. And so, I've said in talks and whatnot that the most important real estate that you'll ever develop is the 6 inches between your ears. And that's so true. And so, but Charles also had 14 years of experience in the business. He had courses around stuff that he didn't necessarily know yet. And, so he had laid the foundation, which gives you the courage and the confidence to get out there and do it. I wouldn't say you need to do it for anything like 14 years. In fact, if you get a really good paid coach in this space, they can really accelerate your timeline. That first deal, Charles, like you said, it's the hardest deal you'll ever do. It's also the most important deal you'll ever do because it puts you on the map. Internally, like you got that sense of achievement, like, wow, I really can do this. But externally, brokers know who you are now, lenders know who you are, investors know who you are, and it's going to make your next steps, your next deals, like, actually quite a bit easier, in my opinion. Now, there's nothing easy about doing these deals, but the first one's daunting and it's difficult and it's almost kind of cruel that it's that way because it's like I said, it's the hardest deal you'll ever do. But it's so worth doing. Like, if you get it done, you put yourself in a good position to grow in this business and to really take it on. So, and then, just lastly, like, going from, I kind of touched on this already, but going from part-time to full-time, taking the plunge, going from being an employee to an owner, you got to do that. You have to do that to do this full-time. And, I can't imagine doing this part-time myself. It's a big job. And right. All the things that Charles does, that diversity of activity, the broker relations, the investor relations, the asset management, guys, is one of the most important aspects of this business. And we don't really talk about it a whole lot on the show, but it's where the rubber meets the road with your business plan. And, first of all, you got to get the right property manager in there, and then you got to manage that property manager well. And that's what asset management refers to is managing the manager. So, dude, just congratulations on all of that. And particularly taking that leap, and look where you are now, 3 years later.
Tate, you touched on something I think very important in there. So, the 6 inches in between your ears, and sometimes you can be your biggest supporter and it can be your biggest detractor. And for many years, I think, as I was working the job, and I thought to myself, well, do I want to go out and do my own thing? And you have those self-doubts that creep in.
Yeah.
And, I would go to meetup events and I would talk to people, and, a lot of people I would give advice to, because even though I wasn't running my own business at the time, I had good amount of experience running other people's businesses.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people would tell me, oh, what good advice you have, and they made money off it. And I'm thinking to myself, boy, why is everybody making money off my advice except for me?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's when I kind of had an epiphany at some point that I said, maybe I'm just doubting myself because everybody's telling me how good this stuff is and they're making money with it. I'm saying, if they're making money, why can't I make money with it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just telling yourself a different message and starting to reframe what goes in your ears and what comes out.
Oh man, that's powerful stuff, guys. Like, first of all, what goes in your brain is super important. Who you surround yourself with is massively important. You want to put yourself in the right rooms with people that are doing bigger things than you so that you can look at leveling up, because that, when you realize these are just people doing business and having conversations and doing the things it takes to be a bigger player, it brings it more down to earth in terms of like, okay, maybe I could do it too. Right. And then, there was another great point I was going to make and I can't remember. But like, I know what it was. It's like what comes out of your mouth is every bit as important, because the creative power of your languaging, your word, and I don't want to deep dive too much into this, but it creates your reality. And what you say about yourself in particular, out loud and also internally, it really creates your self-image and who you are and how you show up. So and there's that NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, that's really it's kind of a science of how to use language powerfully to create your reality. And the truth is, like, we all do this all the time anyway. We're always talking about ourselves, other people, and the world, and we have a choice over what kind of words we use, how we phrase it. And I'll share this with you guys. I have a boundary in my life that I just don't ever insult myself or put myself down at all. Like, if I drop something like, a glass or whatever, and it breaks and shatters, it's like, a lot of people would like, oh, I'm such a klutz, or I can't believe I did that, or inside or out, they're going to say something like that. I don't ever do that. In fact, I just kind of like, okay, that's it, okay. And there's no judgment at all. It's not like I judge it as good or bad. It just is what it is. And, this mastery over mindset, we could talk about this the whole episode. I don't want to, because you've got a lot of other wisdom, but, mastering your mindset is one of the best investments and activities you can do. Because it dictates everything. And it dictates what you end up being able to do. And Henry Ford, and we've said it on the show a lot, the Henry Ford quote about whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you're right. And if you believe you can do this business, nothing's going to stop you ultimately, in my opinion. And if you believe you can't do it, man, you're swimming upstream against a really strong current.
Right. And probably one thing worth mentioning is that, keep in mind, sometimes these things evolve. So the way that you start isn't always the way that you end. Sometimes as you grow and you change, you develop different philosophies and bigger goals. So one thing I personally did in the last month and a half, I attended an event at the end of June. And, I'm not going to say that I learned a ton, because I didn't. I knew a lot of the stuff that was discussed, but I certainly got a reinvigorated focus. And one of the things I realized is that I've been playing too small too long. And I said, I feel like that's something that's been holding me back. So I said, it's time to up the ante and go bigger and go faster. And so I said, bigger goals. So, like for anybody listening, and while this may sound intimidating when you're first starting out, in terms of the syndication space, I mean, so far, I think we have something like $61 million in assets under management.
That's awesome.
Again, I'd love to say that's assets in my pocket. That's not the case. That's the property values. Keep in mind that.
Yep.
But the goal that I've set is $200 million in acquisition in the next year. So I want to take what I've done to date and basically triple that over the next year.
Yep.
So it's just setting bigger goals and saying, okay, you know what? Sometimes you have to change and you have to evolve. So maybe at one time to me, doing that first deal, which our first deal was less than a $5 million purchase, that would have been a big thing because I hadn't done it before. But now that I've done a couple of them, you want to go bigger and you want to go faster. So it's saying, okay, what do I have to change in my own mind to say that's going to allow me to get there?
Yeah. I love that. I love that it came from going to an event and putting yourself in the right room with people that were doing bigger things than you. And it caused you to think, wow, maybe I'm playing too small here. Maybe I'm thinking too small here. And I need to up my game. I need to up my thinking, and I need to up my goals.
Right.
And that's, man, I love these national conferences mainly for that reason. These national conferences, and there's like 3 or 4 of them that I recommend people go to. And I'm happy to share that with you. If you guys want to email me, go to investwithgreenlight.com. Happy to share. But these national conferences are legit, and the speakers are generally very high level. And in Charles' case, he already knew the business really well, so he didn't necessarily get a lot out of the business. And the networking can be absolutely tremendous, but even that wasn't Charles's biggest takeaway. It was leveling up and accelerating his timeline, and also really enlarging his thinking about what he wanted to do. And, was that a weekend?
Yeah, 3-day event. And, it was just eye-opening because it made me think, okay, I have to start going bigger on him.
Yeah.
I'm holding myself back by moving at the same speed that I am.
Yeah. Yeah. That's tremendous. Talk about that first deal a little bit. How big was it? How many units, how large, how much did it cost? All that stuff.
Yeah. So the first one we did was $4,876,000, just a little bit shy of $5 million. And, when you're first starting out, as you already alluded to, sometimes that can be a big thing if you haven't done one.
Yeah.
Now, granted, what I will say is we were very fortunate that deal came to us from our KP on the deal, our key principal. So for anybody brand new who doesn't know what a key principal is, that's the person or people who are going to sign on the loan for you as the guarantor.
Yep.
But they're also a very important part of your business. And when you start out in this business, especially in syndication, it's really track record based. And the thing is, nobody's going to take you seriously when you have no track record because you're an unknown commodity.
Yep.
So the sooner you could align with somebody that's already got that track record, you can use that to bolster your own. Now, with this particular KP that we did the deal with, we had been bringing in deals for probably the better part of a year. Mm-hmm. A lot of deals we looked at, we submitted offers on many of them. Now, keep in mind, guys, as you're doing this, make sure you vet the deals, do the initial underwriting, do your homework, check the area out. Don't send garbage to the KP. If you do that, they're going to treat it like garbage and they're going to hit delete.
Yep.
So make sure that you actually vet it and that you send them good deals. So as we would send these deals to them and have them look at them, we would put offers in, and for one reason or another, they didn't get accepted. So this particular KP lives in Atlanta. Most of his deals are in the Atlanta area, and he knows the market like the back of his hand and has a lot of good connections there. So, he gets this 92-unit deal, and he brings it to us, and he says, do you guys want it? And you might be thinking, why would he do this? Well, he was doing 200 and 300 and 400-unit deals, so he really didn't have any desire to do a 92-unit deal himself.
Yeah.
So he thought about us, and the reason he thought about us is because we were in touch with him on a regular basis.
That's right.
We were putting deals in front of him, and he could see we were serious.
Yep.
Would he have thought of us if we brought him one deal and never reached out again? Probably not.
Yep.
But it was consistency and just, saying, okay, well, let's give these guys a shot and see if they can actually perform.
I love it. And yeah, I mean, again, you were the squeaky wheel. You stayed top of mind with this guy by being in contact, working hard, going after deals, presenting them to him, doing the business, right? Like in the course of business, you developed this relationship where he thought of you immediately when this deal popped up. And that's awesome. Like, sourcing deals is not easy. The broker, we put a lot of effort in our broker relations game, and that's how we get deals. And like, and a lot of times you're bidding on an on-market deal, and you're up against highest and best, and it takes a lot of time, effort, energy, and sometimes it gets emotional. Like, ideally it doesn't, but so getting a deal through a KP is really cool. How did you find your KP?
So with the training courses that we had taken, one of the courses they had was a sponsorship event. And it was a 3-day weekend where they had usually between 10 and 14 sponsors. This particular group does it every year. They had 14 the year that I was there. And it's basically like playing musical chairs. So the KP is rotating. They go spend about an hour or so at each table, and then they move on to the next one, so you get the chance to interact with all of them.
Yep.
So at that event, when I met 14 KPs, I knew right away that there was some I would never do a deal with. Our personalities didn't vibe, and I said, you know what, we're not going to be the right fit. Mm-hmm. But then there's others I knew. I said, okay, I can see myself working with this person. Let's follow up with them. So after that weekend ends, then it's just reaching out to these people and seeing who you can build a relationship with and who's going to be a good fit for you. Because keep in mind, guys, as you're in one of these deals, it might be for a year, it might be for 5 years. So it's not going to be a quick thing. So make sure that there's a good working harmony between you and that person, because you're going to have to deal with them on an ongoing basis for the life of that deal.
Yep. Yeah. That's another golden gem of a point. Like, you want to work with people that you like, trust, you jive with, same core values, just personality wise, you know how good it is, guys. Like, you meet somebody and maybe you don't resonate with them, and it's like, okay, they might be a good person, but like, I wouldn't want to do business with them. But then you meet somebody that's like, wow, I really like resonate with this person. And that's, one of our core values at Greenlight is we only work with people that we like to work with. And that has made our lives so much better, easier, and more productive. And I think it's a really good thing to put in place early. And, like, listeners, if you haven't done a deal yet, you're going to need that KP, that key principle. And, putting yourself in the right room, again, is in general the very best way of doing that, whether that's meetup groups, R.E.I events, conferences. This sounds like an awesome event, this sponsorship event. That's a tremendous way of meeting KPs. And guess what? The KP wants to work with you because all they're doing is signing on a loan. And typically they're not deploying capital. Maybe they do as an investor, but as a KP, they're signing on a loan, and they're leveraging their track record, their net worth, and their liquidity to get the loan. And then they get a pretty decent sized chunk of the deal. And that's a win for them. And so you're providing an opportunity for this person to make money, increase their balance sheet, increase their unit count, everything else that comes as a result of them getting to do a deal. So this is a critical thing. And, when I coach people, we talk with, this is a big piece that you got to get in place early, is your KP. So that's tremendous. What do you, switching gears, we're starting to run up against time, Charles. I hate this. But switching gears for just a second, as far as capital raising goes, what's your game there as far as networking and expanding your sphere, so to speak?
So in the past, it's been primarily old-fashioned methods, and admittedly, I probably prefer those methods. Getting in front of people, networking in person, so on social media as well, and just kind of people hearing me on things like this, like a podcast, and reaching out and we connect. Going forward, I finally agreed to get behind the whole platform and say, okay, I realize it is 2022. We need to start leveraging technology a little more. So with my team, we're going to be building out a platform that's going to have, a lot of leads coming in on a regular basis. And we want to make sure that we're really hitting all of the different focal points. So it'll be online content to podcasts to anything you can do that's going to allow you to get in front of people. So that way people are constantly thinking about you and you have that presence that's going to bring in ongoing circle of leads.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And what kind of deals are you going after now? What size, what asset class?
So we look at B and C assets generally from $10 million on the small side up to the largest we'd probably do is maybe 75 million. I haven't done any of that big yet, but it's on the radar. And the goal is that we really want to start shifting and be looking at more $30 and $40 million deals and less $10 million deals.
Yep. And guess what, listeners? Those deals in a lot of cases are easier to get done. It's easier to get a $30 million deal because the equity groups that are going to be interested in those pieces they want to write $10 million checks plus. And you do a $10 million deal and you got a $3 million capital raise. It's tough to attract that level of capital to your deal. So you're doing the retail organic capital raising where you're raising $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 at a time. And that's an endeavor. There's a lot to that. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of commitment. So, just consider that scale is your friend. It's huge. Like scale is so much your friend in this business. And that's why we all get into it, is for scaling up. Charles is a great example of going from single family to multifamily because the scale is your friend. It's the cash flow generator and it's the wealth builder that you need. That's awesome. Charles, kind of just to bring things full circle, 2 questions. Number one, are there any questions that I have not asked you that you think are important to cover? And number 2, kind of just final words of wisdom for somebody that's looking to do their first deal.
So I'll answer the second one first. But actually, no, I don't think there's anything that we didn't cover, but I think we got some good stuff in. But final words of wisdom. So the only thing you need to do to become successful is don't quit.
Love it.
And that's often the biggest thing. People have their own self-doubts. They have life circumstances that get in the way. Don't allow those circumstances to get in the way. Kick the door down, do whatever you need to, and don't quit. You're going to make mistakes along the way. You're going to screw things up. It's all part of learning.
Yep.
Don't beat yourself up too much for it. Maybe a healthy amount, but then move on and learn from it and say, okay, what do I need to do better next time so I get a different result?
Yeah, it's that whole concept of failing forward, right? Like,
right.
You're gonna make mistakes. Things are gonna come up, and sometimes they're painful, and that's just part of the business and part of being an entrepreneur in general. And you need to have, again, a strong mindset to keep yourself moving forward. And it's only total failure if you do quit, if you let it take you down. So, dude, this has been amazing. Really, really powerful session here with you. There's a lot more stuff we could get into and talk about because, we're pretty close behind you here as far as assets under management. You're a little ahead of us, but we've kind of had the same timeline, same trajectory, and we're going for the same kind of goals. So it's really fun to have somebody like that on the show. I don't have that very often. And so, dude, I wish you all the best. And I know you're going to get to that 200 million. I know you will.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So listeners, thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Apartment Guys. If you enjoyed it, please leave a rating and review on one of the platforms that you're listening to this on. It means a ton to us. And just keep doing what you're doing. You're listening to these and you're out networking, you're out building relationships, which is what this business is all about. It's all relational. So Charles, thanks again. Really enjoyed it.
Likewise. Thanks, Tate.
Yep, you bet. So listeners, we'll catch you on the next episode of The Apartment Gurus. Take care, everybody.
This has been The Apartment Gurus with Tate Siemer. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. To contact Tate, go to www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. He loves to hear from you and thanks you for being a valued listener. Just a reminder that you are the guru. See you on the next episode of The Apartment Gurus.